Hey, good afternoon guys. I'm Mr. J and welcome to our lab. We are going to still be doing experiments this year in chemistry class, even though we're going to be doing them from a distance. For this particular lab, I'm going to be your hands and performing the experiment. You guys get to enjoy the video of the work that I'm doing, but it doesn't mean you just get to sit back and relax. You're still going to be engaged and keeping track of a few things as we go along. So today's lab is called Sober Mind. We're going to be looking at the difference between qualitative and quantitative properties, physical versus chemical properties, physical versus chemical changes, the classification of matter as an element, a compound, or a mixture, and then making observations about the law of conservation of mass. So let's go ahead and begin. To start with, I want you guys to make sure that you have read through the background material present on the lab and then answered the questions that follow the background. That will set you up for success. If you haven't done that yet, please do that now. Next, I'm going to gather the materials that we will need for today's experiment. So, here we go. I've got a test tube in my test tube rack. I've got a piece of copper wire, some sandpaper, some filter paper, a funnel, beaker, and ring stand, as well as a rinse bottle with some deionized water. So I've got all my materials. I'm going to clear my workstation here so that we have space to operate safely. And then go ahead and begin. First thing I'm going to do is sand down the wire really quickly to make sure that it's free of contaminants. Now, even though copper doesn't rust, we can still get some contamination on the wire, and it helps clean it off by using some sandpaper. As you'll notice, maybe it's tough to see, but it does get a little shinier after I have sanded it off. So I'm cleaning off some of that contamination. I'm going to make it that much better for our particular reaction. Okay? Finish wrestling this thing off here real quick. Now, some of you might be thinking to yourself, Mr. Johnson, doesn't copper rust? Well, rust only forms technically with iron compounds. However, copper does react slightly with air to corrode. And so, if you'll notice, now that I've sanded off the copper wire, it's brighter than it was before. I've cleaned off the corrosion, a little bit of that copper oxidation that was on the wire, and now it looks a little cleaner, and it is shining a little bit brighter. So, speaking of luster, the next step says to observe and record its properties. So, here's where we're going to look at some of our qualitative versus quantitative properties. Remember that qualitative properties are properties that can be listed without using numbers, they're descriptive, and quantitative properties involve numbers and quantities. So, for instance, one qualitative property that I could list, and you're going to need to list some others, would be luster. It's a qualitative property of metals. In terms of quantitative properties, the mass of our wire, so I'm going to record using a balance, is 3.82 grams. That's a quantitative property. Now, the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to get some of my silver nitrate into my test tube and get it prepared for our reaction to occur. Go. Fill that test tube up. We've got it most of the way filled. And then I'm going to bend my copper wire so I get some nice little curly cues in it here. very end of it, I'm going to put a little hook over the top so it can hang on the rim of my test tube. Now before I put it in the test tube, I want to take a couple of minutes and share a little bit about what we could see at the molecular level if we were to look at silver nitrate. So silver nitrate is what we would classify as a compound. Remember, copper is an element, meaning that it has one type of atom present in it. Silver nitrate is a compound. It's a combination of one atom of silver, one atom of nitrogen, and 3 atoms of oxygen. When I say silver nitrate, that's actually kind of a misnomer. It's a silver nitrate solution. So this compound has been dissolved into water. When that happens, the silver separates from the nitrate, and we'll end up with an even distribution of silver and nitrate throughout the solution. So this is what we would see if we were able to zoom in at the molecular level. We would see silver and nitrate particles floating around in the solution. Okay? So, next thing that we're going to do is we're going to be putting the coiled copper wire into the test tube and begin making some observations and seeing what occurs. Remember, when we are looking at chemical reactions, there are 4 signs that a chemical reaction has occurred. The first is the production of a gas, which we would see bubbles. The second would be a color change. The third would be some form of energy transfer. And then the fourth one is the formation of a precipitate. So we're going to be watching to see if any of those occur when we place the copper wire into our test tube. So I'm going to go and place it in there now. And you should be able to see almost immediately we're able to observe some changes. I'm going to change locations here really quickly. There we go. So we can see that our copper wire is no longer shiny now that it's in the test tube, and we've got some stuff going on there. At this point, our procedure tells us to allow the system to sit for about 20 minutes before doing anything else. So we're going to let this go for about 20 minutes before we begin to take it out of the solution. As you watch, feel free to record any observations that you see happening inside the test tube. Alright, it's been about 20 minutes now, and so we are going to really quickly, before we do anything else, make some general observations of the test tube that we have in front of us, and also compare it to my first attempt this morning when my camera failed me. So here's the first attempt. This one's been running since this morning, and then you can see the second attempt, the one that we've just been working on the left. Now, please note, and I know it's going to be kind of hard to tell if you can see this in the film, there has been a slight change in the color of the solution. It's become a little bit more blue. So let me draw this a little bit closer to you. Hopefully we can make that observation that it's become a little bit more blue. I'm going to turn us back around. Okay, so as you can hopefully see to a certain extent, we have a beautiful crystalline precipitate on our copper wire, and we have a slight color change in our solution. It's become a little bit more blue. Time has elapsed. We're ready to move on. What we're going to do is take the wire out and filter the precipitate that has formed. First thing we need to do is we're going to fold our filter paper in half, fold it into half one more time, open up one of the pockets, and then place that in our funnel and wet it down just a little bit so that it's ready to do some filtering. I'm going to take my copper wire out. As you can see, a lot of the precipitate stayed in there. You can see that blue color even more now. I'm going to rinse my wire off into my filter paper. Save a little work here. Going directly into the filter paper. Okay. And then I'm going to dry my wire with a paper towel. So as you can see, it's not quite as shiny as it was before I put it in there. It's a little more dull, and it looks a little almost like it's pitted out. I'm going to take its mass now. I'll make sure it's on there, not away. This mass says 3.77 grams. We've seen a mass change. We've seen a decrease in mass. All right, there you have it, our Silver Mine Lab. And in case you're wondering why it is called silver, hopefully you'll be able to figure that out based on the observations that you made of our precipitate and maybe from the diagrams and pictures that are below in our post-lab questions. Your job now is to make sure that you go through and answer the post-lab questions completely, and then submit your document to the assignment on Google Classroom. I hope you guys enjoyed the lab. It was fun for me to get to do the experiment by myself for a change. And good luck answering the questions. Please send me an email if you have any. I will see you on Monday. Have a great day.